Dear pandemic, 18 months ago you foisted yourself upon me and then moved in. Uninvited, unwanted. One day I was going to book talks and memorial service, and the next, wham, a new relationship. One I never wanted, and now I need to break this off. You've definitely overstayed your unwelcome. It's like you asked to sleep in the spare room for a couple of nights and then took up residence, disrupting my life, our lives. And we want you to go now. 18 months ago, in February 2020, there were 78,000 cases of COVID-19 worldwide in 29 countries. All but 1,400 of them were in China. Canada had 8 cases in total. That was before the first care facility in Lynn Valley had an outbreak. On March 5th, they learned that a nurse who had worked there had tested positive. 3 days later, the first person had died. It infected a total of 76 staff and residents, and ultimately 20 people died. This facility is only a few blocks from where my grandkids go to school. When I called, my son said, "We don't know anybody there." I wanted to feel relieved, but my brain kept going into red alert mode each time I heard Lynn Valley and death in the same sentence on the radio. We knew so little about the virus at that point. Could it travel from the care home into my grandkids' school, like some kind of invisible tornado? I was pretty sure it couldn't, but maybe the kids at the school could have grandparents there. The outbreak was finally declared over on May the 6th, 2 months later, during which the Canadian, BC, and worldwide statistics just kept going up and up and up. The World Health Organization declared a worldwide pandemic on Wednesday, March 11th, 2020. Do you remember what you did the next day or the one after that? Well, I do. It seems that both fear and denial can exist in my brain at the same time. Me, on Thursday, March the 12th, the day after this proclamation, I went to a lecture by Bruce McIver at Banyan Books. Bruce is a popular guy, and I wasn't the only Unitarian crowded in with about 30 others in their small space in the bookstore. There was an aisle kept clear for fire regulations, but other than that, we were all sitting so close we couldn't not touch the person next to us. No masks, no hand sanitizer. Wise woman Marg Fletcher said, "I would have liked to have gone, but COVID. I haven't been that close with that many people since then." So far as I know, nobody got COVID that night, but how would I know? Contact tracing wasn't a thing at that point. The following day, Friday the 13th, I came here for a memorial service. There were a lot of precautions taken and no one got COVID at the church. We bumped elbows. A crew came in and sanitized all the touch surfaces. Some things were different, but again, it would be a long time before masks were common. And food, as is the custom here at memorial services, was laid out on long tables for people to help themselves. And that was the last time I've been close to that much food. So pandemic. At first we thought you'd just leave on your own in a week or two. After a couple of months, you were still in residence. We thought you'd leave us alone over the summer. We knew you might come back in the fall, but we were looking forward to a summer break, time by ourselves to figure things out, get our grounding once again. But that was not to be. The numbers just kept going up, and the restrictions were getting tighter and tighter. Frankly, pandemic, this has been an abusive relationship. You started telling me I couldn't go out with my friends. At some points, you even forbade me to leave the house and wouldn't let anyone come to visit me. Now that I'm fully vaccinated, it feels like I've been awarded the equivalent of a restraining order against you. You might go on and wreak havoc elsewhere, but you've been ordered to keep away from me. To extend the analogy, even if you do manage to get near me, the damage you can do to my life is limited, I'm told. I might get COVID-19, but I won't die or even wind up in ICU. That's what they tell me. And if your gang of variants begin to rage through the country, I may have to go back to masking more often and social distancing always. But for now, I am enjoying the relative blissful freedom of escaping your reign of terror, relatively unscathed. I say relatively because we've all had to develop coping strategies and likely become less trusting of our fellow human beings. We do a risk assessment for every situation we're in. At first, in March of 2020, I eyed well-dressed older people with suspicion. Had they been on an ocean cruise lately? Then it was young children who couldn't be trusted to keep 6 feet away from me. If I saw a young family coming towards me, I crossed to the other side of the street. And now it's the millennials who are the age group contacting COVID more than others. Early on, we thought we could keep you at bay just by washing our hands really, really well. We watched videos on how to wash our hands, and we joked about how next week we might move on to learn about colors and shapes. We timed our grocery store visits for when things weren't busy or found neighbors who offered to shop or order in. Some of us sprayed our groceries and quarantined them for 2 days on the porch. I personally didn't stockpile toilet paper, but a while ago I found a very large bag of dried apricots and several jars of peanut butter at the back of the shelf from the time I was shopping at most once a week, and would fill my cart up with any non-perishables that might come in handy. We prayed 3 times a day. In retrospect, it feels like praying. We tuned in at 9 a.m. to hear the Prime Minister address us from the steps of his home. Then at 3 p.m., we listened to Dr. Bonnie Henry and Minister Dix. We were supplicants, begging in our prayer, please let the numbers go down. For evening prayer, we join our neighbors for a communion ceremony at 7 p.m., banging pots to thank not God, but the healthcare workers for all that they were doing. Be calm, be kind, be safe. Didn't you sometimes want to say amen or so mote it be after those 6 words were repeated? What else could we have done? It wasn't enough, though. We went from seeing 100 cases a day as reason for a bad day to witnessing over 500 and then more. Those words, be kind, be safe, be calm, took on the status of a mantra. It feels reminiscent of Julian of Norwich in the 13th century telling her visitors, all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. I'm told that reading, bookstore sales, and even self-publishing all increased over the past months. Philip Resnick published a volume of pandemic poems that were written between February 28th to December 31st, 2020. Resnick taught in political science at UBC for over 40 years and wrote poetry all his life. Here's his piece from September 25th on the second wave. It was tough enough adjusting to incessant calls to wash your hands with soap, avoid touching your face, remember to mask up, stay as far away from strangers in your path as safe distancing dictates, work from inside your domicile when possible, help your kids negotiate the AirSATS classes on the screen, and keep your sanity intact. Now comes a second wave, perhaps less lethal than the first, perhaps not. We're congregating together, eating out in groups, rallying in numbers for some cause, praying communally to some God are once again taboo. This time the young, or young at heart, are designated as the carrier group, as overstretched hospitals and staff prepare for yet another round of testing sites, improvised wards and ICUs. The mood out there darkening with the autumn sky as folks who thought this virus was a one-season pest learn that visitors like this have come to call our species home. And then in April of this year, there's the headline that COVID third wave takes hold across Canada. In June, an article was posted with the headline, "Pandemic Fizzles in BC." Not so fast, because then in the first week of July, the fourth wave started after restrictions were lifted. Therapists and spiritual teachers tell us that feelings are fleeting, all is impermanent. I've been more aware of that over this period, emotionally liable, they call it. I've been known to shed tears at a COVID briefing, which I usually reserve only for really sad movies. In my writing group, a friend proposed the prompt, if COVID was a color, what color would it be? Perhaps like you, gray or even black is what came to mind at first. But as I wrote more, I thought about the cerulean blue overhead when meeting a good friend outdoors. The wide variety of shades of green as I pay more attention to the plants and trees growing and changing through the seasons. I even noted rainbow tie-dye, the official colors of my neighborhood Kitsilano, as I've spent much more time in my own neighborhood. Let's now have a musical break, and then I'll share some reflections of my own and others about some silver linings from the pandemic. Loosen, loosen, baby.
Loosen, loosen, baby. You don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. Loosen, loosen, baby. You don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. Holy breath and holy name, will you ease this pain? Holy breath and holy name, will you ease this pain? Loosen, loosen, baby, you don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. Loosen, loosen, baby, and holy carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, ease this pain. Holy baby, and holy carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. Loosen, loosen, baby, and holy carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go.
So how have we changed because of the pandemic? Here's part of a poem by Sarah Duvall that Reverend Lara shared in January this year. It made me think about the changes in my own lifestyle I'd been forced to make, but that might be keepers. The title, Stay Slow, says it all. Let's get outside every day to drink in the cool air and look up at the sky, to hug trees and smell flowers. Let's stay slow. Sit quietly and stare, take more naps, say no and yes more often. Keep cooking and making bread, knitting, painting, writing, creative crafts, or just creative thoughts. Maybe you developed a COVID hobby. Mine was growing succulents, all of which I got for free from my Buy Nothing group. I have a south-facing living room window, and they've given me much joy as they've grown and even flowered. The collection is now extensive enough. I did some repotting yesterday and will be offering back some pups, the new plants that grow beside the larger ones. Succulents are slow and rather satisfying, I've learned. We've heard a lot from the epidemiologists and public health experts, of course, but social scientists are also busy doing research about the effects of the pandemic. Some people were drinking more alcohol, and some weren't. Some people were gaining weight, that famous COVID-15, and some were actually getting more exercise and eating more healthily and losing weight. Clinical psychologist and author of The Key to Calm, Linda Blair, says it's important to realize that you might not be coming out of this as the same person who went into it. She cautions people to take their time with their friends as we emerge. What you think about your friendships as you've experienced them in such pressurized circumstances is not necessarily a reflection of your normal relationship with these people. Think back to how stressed you've been and give everybody you can bear to give a chance. She says the true extent of any long-term changes to our relationships will still be revealing themselves for a long time. I like to think of friendships as an onion, Linda says. We have inner layers and outer layers. The next few months are about deciding who we allow to remain in the inner layers and who needs to go to the outer layers of only saying hi if we see them in the street. I invited some people to send me their reflections, and here's what Sheila Rozelle says about the pandemic silver lining. I've been told that my life changes frequently. The past 17 months are no different. Old friends have come back to say hello. Others have vanished. I'm not the only one who has rediscovered the call of nature. My daily walks at Jericho Beach or Spanish Banks, as well as my old meditation practice, have been resurrected. These life-affirming activities have brought solace, calm, and joy. On the other hand, I've had to let go of most of my volunteer work, primarily for health reasons, replacing it with several introspective online courses or discussion groups, including UCV's Listening Path, Me and White Supremacy, and memoir writing. I also took the Science of Happiness through University of California, Berkeley, and various other programs. Each offered opportunities to self-examine and discover. A large part of my journey included the deepening of friendships, particularly through frequent bench talks. These were enjoyed come rain, wind, or shine. These changes now seem firmly implanted. I feel confident they'll stick. That is, until other opportunities present themselves. Silver linings abound everywhere. It's all in the eye of the beholder. Silver linings indeed. I resonate with Sheila's comments. As an extrovert and compulsive event planner, I've learned to appreciate the pleasure of one-on-one conversations. Where once, if I was getting together with a friend for coffee or dinner, I'd send out a flurry of invitations for others in our circle to join in. I've experienced personally why not everybody does that. A significant new practice for me as a result of the memoir writing workshop led by Maggie DeVries. Most years, mixed in with various other New Year's resolutions, I've included some version of Write More. And whatever the details, it's never made its way to the end of December, but remained on my list of aspirations. Maggie asked us all to send her an introductory email before the course, including what our goals were. Mine was simply, if at the end of this course I identify as a writer and have a regular writing practice, I'll feel successful. And voila, with the help of increased solitary time, Maggie's excellent leadership, and a special small group cohort, it is so. Most days I write for at least 10 minutes and usually much longer, and am now considering participating in NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month in November. Don't you love alliteration? Many people I talk to mention walking. There's a spiritual history of walking as a good spiritual discipline from St. Augustine in the 5th century, who said it is solved by walking, solvitur ambulando, to Julia Cameron, popular best-selling author of The Artist's Way and many other books, who includes walking along with writing morning pages and taking yourself on an artist date as key creativity practices. Indeed, her second book she called Walking in This World, The Practical Art of Creativity. Here's a comment from Mary Beam on walking. Before COVID, I got my exercise by going places. I rarely walked by myself otherwise. With the lockdown, I needed to go for walks with no purpose other than getting out and getting exercise. Now walking is more a part of my life, and I take greater pleasure in observing the trees and listening to the birds, smelling the flowers. When Van Dusen Garden opened again, I joined a group of friends who went there every 2 weeks. It has really brought us closer together, and I have a whole new appreciation for the gardens. And Leslie Hill tells this story. A year after the start of the pandemic, Janet Erickson, a fellow choir member, fell in the dog park and required surgery. I offered to walk her 6-month-old puppy for her. I hadn't met him, but I was coming back from my own surgery the previous December and knew I needed more exercise, so it felt like a win-win situation. But it was much more. Kobe has a big heart, believes everyone loves him, and the world is a good place. It's a worldview I needed after a year of COVID, a cancer diagnosis, the loss of a much-loved aunt, and the depressing daily news. Walking Kobe an hour a day made me a nicer, happier person, improved my stamina within days, and introduced me to a new neighborhood and other dogs and dog walkers. While Kobe explores scents, tries to charge after squirrels and crows, and learns to read other dogs to see which ones will make good playmates, I watch birds, admire the changes as trees shift from end of winter to spring to summer, and escape the depressing news for an hour every day. I've learned a lot about dogs from Kobe, Janet, and other dog owners. My biggest problem has become how not to tell Janet that her fall is the best thing that has happened to me since COVID began. It's been nearly 6 months. I still walk him 6 days a week. He greets me with huge excitement every time I bark from the gate to announce myself. Janet has accepted my status as an eccentric aunt to her dog. Then I go home to my cat and appreciate her independent spirit. I have the best of all worlds. And then there's technology. Many of us learned new ways to put our devices to work to maintain our relationships. Zoom, of course. Many in our UCV community took to Zoom early on. The environment team took up Tomiko Suzuki's suggestion for a Zoom wine and cheese one Friday night in March of 2020. She suggested wearing silly hats and, of course, having wine and/or cheese. These gatherings immediately became weekly, and while the initial rule was not to talk about environment business, they quickly realized that that was what had drawn them together. There emerged a balance between personal sharing along with talk of petitions, protests, and plans. My own women's group, who have met monthly with a few changes over the years for nearly 20 years, went to Zoom and again found the rhythm of weekly helped to ground us. It may be that for every in-person gathering, you need at least 4 Zoom calls to have the same effect. Since we live scattered around the Lower Mainland, from Kitsilano to Ladner, Richmond, and New Westminster, Zoom began to feel like a good solution for our group. A few months ago, I would have guessed we might decide to alternate a Zoom gathering one month with an in-person one the following. But as soon as the restrictions were lifted, we all enthusiastically left Zoom behind and began to meet in person again. Many of us found ourselves connecting with people we didn't usually regularly connect with. I usually host Christmas dinner for my kids and grandkids, a total of 6 of us in my small apartment. But if we're celebrating Christmas over Zoom, why not invite all the cousins and the great aunt from San Francisco? Here's another comment from Mary Beam. Zoom has proven to be a good way to connect with my siblings. Also, I learned of trickster cards, and now we play regularly with friends from Ontario. It's a great way to stay in touch. I'm sure we'll continue to do this. Our relationships with people have certainly changed, deepened possibly, but what about our relationship with things? Here are Eva Ellen's musings on what changed and what will stick. Lots has remained the same and lots has changed. My relationship with my clothes definitely changed. With the shutdown of indoor dining, theaters, and large gatherings, 3/4 of my wardrobe had nowhere to go. My sweatpants and tops became daily wear. I didn't have to think about what to choose from the closet. 5th day wearing the same sweats and food-stained t-shirt? No problem. But every now and again, I found myself dressing up in my good jeans and clean tops to go grocery shopping. I'm not sure what will stick, but I suspect my relationship with my clothes will continue toward greater indifference, less about my identity and persona. Buddhist teacher and writer Joanna Macy says, "Gratitude for the gift of life is the primary wellspring of all religions, the hallmark of the mystic, the source of all true art. Yet we so easily take this gift for granted." If you're on the YouTube chat, I invite you now to type in something for which you are grateful for. Some that come to my mind is how grateful I am for this community and its talented members, for how we were able to pivot, as they say, to an online community, keeping connections going among us, but also welcoming people from, like my brother, who's in Prince Edward Island watching today. Attending and volunteering with arts organizations was a big part of my life pre-pandemic, and I'm grateful for the number of artists, theater companies, and musicians who shared their talents with us digitally. I'm grateful for the opportunities this community offers for self-examination and self-expression. Thank you. Truly, thank you. And now the closing hymn is 1017, Building a New Way. Our closing words are from the poem by Sarah DeWall. Let's promise to say thank you for the little things and big things every day. Not to get too comfortable or too self-righteous, to let in enough pain to stay fired up, committed to the dream of belovedness, the dream of the emerging world, where our liberation is bound up with everyone and everything, always beckoning us to see more clearly. Let's promise to love more deeply, promise to let the fires burn away the old, crusty obstacles and excuses, and make space for new dreams, for all that imagination can conjure. Promise to notice the light and let it shine, to fan the flames of hope and cleanse the spirit and let life begin again, renewed, gentle, following the sparks into the next unknown. Carry the flame.